Humanity did not come into this world strong. On the contrary, the world seemed designed to destroy it. Amid predators, hunger, and disasters, there was a fragile being, one not even expected to survive. And yet, that being did not disappear. On the contrary, it became human. They were in a harsh world, and their chances of survival were almost non-existent. Life meant facing hunger and fear every day. In this struggle, only those who could endure survived. Survival required intelligence, creativity, and an unyielding will. True superiority was not found in strength, but in the ability to adapt, the speed of learning, and the depth of the bonds they formed with one another. Love, as an unseen yet powerful force, held communities together and gave them meaning to continue living. At first, it was only a momentary closeness, but over time, this contact ceased to be a brief encounter and became a lasting bond. In that unexpected spark, the first steps were taken on the path that would one day evolve into humanity. 4.2 million years ago, the age ruled by fragility Australopithecus. Among Africa's endless horizons, the first distinguishable beings of our evolutionary journey emerged, Australopithecus. They lived in the lands we know today as East and Southern Africa, across a vast region stretching from Ethiopia to Kenya and down to South Africa. Between scattered woodlands and open savannas, in a constantly changing environment, they had to learn how to survive. For Australopithecus, life unfolded on a delicate balance between opportunity and threat. Their small bodies and limited strength left them vulnerable to the many predators around them. They lacked sharp teeth, powerful claws, or the speed that could guarantee escape. For this reason, their methods of survival were based on constant vigilance, moving together, and quickly retreating to the trees when danger arose. Living in groups allowed them to detect danger earlier, increase their chances of finding food, and share the care of the young. Trees were an indispensable refuge for them. Their bodies were still well suited for climbing, and they possessed the agility to escape predators on the ground. The majority of their food sources came from plants, fruits, leaves, seeds, roots, and tree bark. At times, insects and small animals also became part of the diet. However, when they approached to drink water or to gather food growing along riverbanks, giant crocodiles waited silently, ready to strike with a single, deadly attack. Their crushing force and tearing jaws turned any creature that came too close to the shore into a target. These reptiles were heirs of ancient ages, survivors from the time of the dinosaurs. Their bodies were shaped for ambush, with armor-like skin and muscles that sprang into action without warning. On the savannas, saber-toothed predators were a silent and unstoppable threat. The hunting methods of saber-toothed cats were based on approaching unnoticed through vegetation and striking a vulnerable target in a single, sudden attack. When a saber-toothed predator caught an Australopithecus, the outcome almost always ended in death. Its long, specially evolved teeth were designed to target the throat or the abdominal cavity, often leaving no chance of escape. The most frequently hunted were the youngest and most vulnerable juveniles who strayed from the group. Their bodies were not yet suited for rapid climbing, nor did they possess the endurance required for prolonged escape. Infant mortality was common. Each loss meant a heavy blow to the future of the group. Yet within this fragility, unexpectedly, the oldest core of humanity was hidden. The need for protection gave rise to empathy. A single mother could not watch her young. At every moment, while the infant demanded constant attention, she also had to gather food. For this reason, the group moved as a single body. Each individual contributed to the protection and upbringing of the young. Within this shared responsibility, something new began to take root, the first traces of solidarity, compassion, and a sense of belonging. In Australopithecus communities, social bonds were complex. Interactions were brief and shaped more by biological impulses than by emotion. When a female entered her receptive period, her scent, body language, and movements drew attention. The dominant male displayed his strength, using his position to gain access and advantage. However, this dominance was not absolute. In the background of the group, females were also making their own choices. At times, they turned to another male, younger, more agile, and reliable enough to protect the young. These secret and swiftly occurring unions increased genetic diversity and raised the chances of survival. Some Australopithecus groups began to leave fragmented forests behind, and they stepped permanently into the open savannas of East Africa. Here, every day was like a roll of the dice between life and death. But a small difference began to emerge: skillful hands and courageous minds. A fragile prey was slowly becoming a maker. The age of inventions, 2 million years ago. As forests shrank, savannas expanded. In this transforming landscape, an opportunity no one expected emerged: the massive remains left behind by predators. Homo habilis learned to see stone not merely as a rock, but as a tool, one that could cut through hide and break apart bones. But with this, an irreversible threshold was crossed. Dependence on tools steadily increased. From that moment on, no hominin could exist without tools. Homo habilis tracked the hunting traces of large predators, and when the danger had passed, moved quickly to claim the remains. What was worthless to the great predators became a source of nourishment for them. However, scavenging was always risky. A predator could return at any moment to reclaim its kill. This constant threat shaped their behavior. They learned to act together. While some kept watch over the surroundings, others separated the meat. Sharpened stones allowed them to quickly cut through meat and open bones. Over time, the brain of Homo habilis grew, and this development brought about a profound change in the way of thinking. They shaped their tools by striking stones against one another, with control and precision. Each strike required imagining the final form that did not yet exist, anticipating in advance the sharp edge hidden within the stone. This was the birth of a consciousness no longer focused solely on the present, a mind that learned from the past and designed the future. This expansion of the brain also transformed social life. As the ability to distinguish gestures, sounds, and emotions increased, Homo habilis developed communication. The most primitive steps of language emerged within an ancient Burma, woven from throat-borne sounds and gestures carrying meaning. Survival within the group depended on the coordination of actions, warning of danger, claiming food, defending territory, and calling the young. Over time, different tones emerged, some signaling alarm or calm, others expressing dominance or submission. In this landscape, Gomphotheres and Daenothers roamed. These massive-bodied creatures shared the same lands as Homo habilis. Moving in herds, they cut through dense vegetation, toppled young trees, and created openings across the savanna. Without realizing it, they were reshaping the landscape. For early hominins, these traces became valuable opportunities. Following them made it possible to reach new water sources, fresh feeding grounds, or safer areas. But life in East Africa was not shaped by animals alone. The land itself posed an unpredictable threat. The Great Rift Valley was a deep wound tearing through the continent. Fiery eruptions rising from its depths covered vast regions in ash. This grey shroud swept away the landscape, rendered food invisible, and forced communities to move toward the unknown. The climate was also unforgiving. Prolonged droughts turned rivers into dry beds and grasslands into dust. For months, the greatest fear was thirst. Then, without warning, violent rains would begin. These life-giving waters could also bring death. Sudden floods swept across the savanna, dragging away and destroying everything in their path. But these disasters did not halt the advance of creativity. From fragility, resilience began to emerge. From the spark born of invention, a desire to explore and to dominate arose. And thus, a new traveler appeared, the first species to leave Africa and spread across the world. A traveler without boundaries. 1.9 million years ago, the age of discovery, Homo erectus. This ancestor was taller, stronger, and more resilient. Its body had evolved to endure long days under the scorching sun, endless journeys across the savanna, and harsh climatic conditions. It had a robust skeleton, muscles adapted for long distances, and a fully upright posture. Endurance-based hunting became its most effective weapon. It did not need the sudden leap of a big cat, nor the flawless ambush of a crocodile. Relentlessly under the burning sun, never stepping back until its breath failed and exhaustion brought it to the ground. Erectus groups threw stones from a distance to wear down the targets. At the end of the hunt, when its strength was completely spent, it would collapse to the ground. They finished the task with double-edged hand axes. For the first time, a hominin did not flee from predators, it joined their ranks. Homo erectus, for the first time in human history, mastered a force that had always been feared: fire. Perhaps it all began after a storm. Lightning struck a tree and left its branches engulfed in flames. At first, the group kept its distance. Fire was a force that both illuminated and destroyed. But over time, the allure of warmth and the protection that drove predators away proved stronger. They dared to move closer, step by step. Perhaps one of them picked up a burning branch and kept it alive through the night. That moment was a point of no return. For the first time, a living being did not merely survive fire, it mastered it. Living under the shadow of predators like giant hyenas, it had to develop an ever sharper memory. Remembering where a hyena hid, or in which clearing it attacked a companion, was the thin line between life and death. To manage defense and attack. At the same time, Erectus developed more advanced forms of communication, signals, gestures, and sounds. At the same time, it also came face to face with other hominins such as late Australopithecus and Homo habilis. These were not brief encounters, but a coexistence that lasted hundreds of thousands of years. The rivalry with Homo habilis was direct. Both species used tools, scavenged carcasses, and hunted small animals. This similarity in their paths to survival caused their hunting grounds to overlap, making conflict inevitable. When a habilis group found a carcass abandoned by a predator, it knew it was racing against time, to strip the meat, break the bones, and carry away everything that could be taken. But if, at that very moment, an Erectus group appeared, the tension reached its peak. Habilis resisted with stones and sticks, but the strength of Erectus, its superior tools, and its organized structure most often decided the outcome. Over time, Homo habilis communities were pushed to the margins, and eventually their lineage went extinct. But the most striking trait of Homo erectus was its wandering spirit. While other species remained bound to Africa, Erectus walked toward the unknown. From its beginnings in East Africa, it spread northward and south across Africa. Even though no fossils have been found in West Africa, stone tools, such as double-edged hand axes, have been discovered there. In this region, the largest meteorite impact of the hominin ages took place. The Bosumtwi impact, located in what is now Ghana. The rocky mass that fell from the sky released an unimaginable amount of energy. The ground shook, forests ignited, and in the heart of the woodland a massive crater formed. For the Homo erectus living in that region, this catastrophe was an event beyond the limits of comprehension. Africa's climate during this period was extremely volatile. Prolonged droughts and sudden downpours dried up rivers and wiped out resources. Giant herbivore herds were constantly on the move, searching for water and fresh grazing lands. With its resilient body and long-distance adaptive build, Homo erectus had no choice but to follow them. Leaving East Africa, it crossed the Nile corridor and the Sinai Desert, reaching the Mediterranean Levant and the Caucasus. In Eurasia, to withstand the cold, it had to cover its body. At first, it made do with what was at hand: the hides of animals it hunted, or skins gathered from carcasses. Over time, it learned to clean hides, dry them over fire, and wrap its body more effectively. It no longer relied solely on caves or natural shelters, it carried its protection against the climate with it. Thanks to this innovation, Homo erectus entered regions previously unreachable and survived in landscapes where winter was lethal to other hominins. In Eurasia, it came face to face with giant creatures such as the woolly rhinoceros, Coelodonta antiquitatis. These majestic animals may have given rise to the earliest forms of awe, fear, and reverence. They were not merely sources of food, they were nature itself, perhaps the first spirits, or gods, in the mind of early humans. Facing them was an extreme risk. Their speed and power could end a life in a single moment. Yet after the attacks of other predators, the remains they left behind offered a food opportunity never seen before. Eurasian megafauna forced erectus to refine its weapons for both defense and attack. They produced sturdier hand axes and fire-hardened spears, and these tools began to be used as extensions of their bodies. One of the giant carnivores they encountered was the primitive cave lion, larger and more powerful than today's lions. This predator did not hunt alone, it set ambushes in coordinated groups, at the very places where hominins searched for food or water. Encountering such a hunter in open terrain meant almost certain death. Setting out from Eurasia, Homo erectus spread to India, China, and even as far as the Indonesian archipelago. By taking advantage of periods when sea levels fell, they are thought to have reached distant islands such as Java. Yet there is a surprising possibility: Homo erectus may have been the first seafarer among our ancestors. Perhaps driven by the need to explore, it built simple rafts and crossed the sea. On Java and the surrounding islands, they lived alongside large predators, including giant monitor lizards that were the direct ancestors of the Komodo dragon. These reptiles were extremely dangerous creatures, silent ambush hunters that left bites laden with bacteria to weaken their prey. On Flora's Island, Homo erectus 2410 was likely in competition with Leptopteros robustus, a giant stork that lived in open landscapes. This bird not only inspired fear, but also posed a serious rival for carcasses and small prey. Nights that were once associated with darkness were transformed into warm, illuminated, safe spaces around the fire. Watching the movement of the flames may have triggered introspection, abstract thought, and the first sparks of imagining the future. They did not have an articulated language, but the sounds they produced were complex and contained a far richer variety than those of a chimpanzee. By the fire, they mimicked animals with gestures, sounds, and shadows, or reenacted moments of the hunt. Gathering around the flames may have been one of the first shared spaces where the group formed bonds. Homo erectus males were physically closer to females. This suggests that violence-based competition had diminished. A male no longer secured his lineage through strength alone. He needed cooperation, alliances, and lasting pair bonds. Perhaps it was right here, among the savannas and forests they roamed, that pair-bonded love emerged for the first time. Homo erectus infants required adult care. For many years, the presence of two caregiving figures greatly increased their chances of survival. Fossil records show that some individuals, despite suffering serious injuries or illnesses, survived to advanced ages. This clearly shows that others cared for them, bringing food and water to the elderly or to injured mothers. From this blend of endurance, cooperation, and shared warmth, an even stronger species would emerge. The first species to dare to face the giants of megafauna. From here, the journey continues. If you'd like to follow what comes next, we'd be glad to have you subscribe. And if you turn on notifications, part 2 will arrive next week. This is Axiom Earth.